Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. It has been a day of productivity in the kitchen. We are still in the throes of harvest season with the garden, but I had to take a break to process some things that a friend gave me. I traded some tomatoes for some zucchini and squash from a neighbor whose tomatoes are not doing well, and if you've watched any of my previous garden tours, you know that my squash and zucchini are completely done for the year. The squash bugs were out of control and I was pretty much done with those by mid-June. So my neighbor gave me a whole bunch of squash and zucchini, and I had to think fast on what I was going to do with it. So I ended up making some zucchini flour. I shredded some to make zucchini bread or zucchini muffins over the next couple of months. And we also decided on hibachi night. One of the habits that I've gotten in over the last year or so is to constantly be thinking about what I can be preserving next. So in the off season, I might be making chicken stock and canning that for the pantry, pressure canning dried beans from the pantry so that we have quart and pint jars of cooked beans all ready to go, or even just slicing or dicing up fresh vegetables, whether it be from the garden or from the store, to have ready to use in the freezer. So let's head into the kitchen and get some stuff done. Of course, one of the absolute staples of food storage are rice and beans. The only problem is a lot of people don't know what to do with dry beans. They may store a lot of them, but not really have any ideas of what to use them for. Well, one of the easiest ways to do something with those beans in your food storage is to go ahead and pressure can them. My favorite way to do this is to get out 7-quart jars because I have a 7-quart pressure canner. Pour about a cup to a cup and a half of dried beans in the bottom of your jars. Fill each jar with clean filtered water and give them a good stir. Now, I like to stir mine multiple times over the next 12 hours or so. Otherwise, if you don't ever stir them, I watched a video from J. Morrell Stewart where her beans all soaked and swelled, and then they were 100% jammed in those jars, and she ended up kind of chiseling away at them, and I believe she threw them away. I don't completely remember. I just remember laughing at the time only because I've done the very same thing. So this seems to solve that problem. I stir it multiple times throughout the hours that it is in the fridge soaking, and then the next day I rinse the beans, fill with fresh water, and pressure can them. I knew I wanted to turn some of these large zucchini into zucchini flour, but I was also going to shred some to put in 2-cup freezer bags to use at a later time for zucchini muffins or zucchini bread. Now, I always peel mine because if my children were to see dark green flecks in some bread, no matter how wonderful it tastes, they would not eat it. So I peeled them, shredded this up into a big mixing bowl, and then put 2 cups at a time into some quart freezer bags to use later in zucchini bread. I do not have an excellent recipe to share. I'm going to try multiple recipes, and I will let you know if there are any that we have absolutely loved. I ended up freezing 8 quart bags of shredded zucchini. Now, each of those bags just has 2 cups in it, so that means either for the next 8 months, we can have zucchini bread once, or for the next 4 months, we can have it twice a month. But either way, I love getting in these little habits of thinking of how I can preserve what I've got so that we can be intentional to use it up. Now it's just going to be a matter of making sure once a month I pull one of those bags out and whip up some zucchini bread or zucchini muffins. I'm excited to try out some different recipes, and I'll do a video when we find one that we love so I can share the recipe with you. Now, I always try to remember to label my bags before I fill them because it's a whole lot harder to do when you put something cold in these Ziploc bags. They get a little bit of moisture on them, and even a Sharpie won't stick. I reuse my freezer bags as often as possible, as long as I'm not putting things like raw chicken in it, which would totally gross me out no matter how many times I washed the bag. But they are just so handy when you're making a lot of freezer meals and freezer food, or even freezing vegetables in large quantities like this, because you can just let out all the air, flatten them, stack them up, and stick them in the freezer. And then once they're frozen, you've got these pretty thin freezer bags, and you can move them around the freezer as you need to make room for other things. Now I am slicing the rest of these large zucchini into about 1/2-inch slices, and I'm gonna fill my dehydrator and let it go for probably 12 hours. It may even take longer. I typically dehydrate vegetables at about 120 or 125. I think it's still considered raw when you do it that low. And then I am going to throw these into my blender and turn it into zucchini flour. Now, these turned out so good. I'm not sure that I've ever eaten dehydrated zucchini, but my daughter, who is 7, came over to see what I was getting out of the dehydrator and asked to try them because they kind of look like dehydrated apple slices. And it was so sweet. We ate several of them before I threw the rest in the blender. Every time I dehydrate food and end up blending it up, whether it's onion powder, garlic powder, or in this case, zucchini flour, I'm always so surprised at how little I end up with in the dehydrated form. So I dehydrated these 4 massive zucchini and I ended up with less than 1 pint of zucchini flour. Now, if you've never heard of this before, zucchini flour can be substituted 1-to-1 for all-purpose flour when you're baking. Now, I wouldn't recommend substituting all of your flour for zucchini flour. That would not have the type of product and end result that you'd be looking for. But think about how much zucchini is in this little pint jar. Just swapping a couple of tablespoons in a large recipe will make a huge difference and will add a lot of nutritional value. What I did with the rest of the zucchini and squash, which were, as you can see, a much more manageable size, the texture and flavor really change when you let zucchini and squash get too large. So I saved the smaller ones and we decided to have hibachi night. For us, hibachi night just means sauteed squash, zucchini, and onions. Occasionally we add mushrooms, but the kids are not big fans. These are actually onions from our garden, which was very exciting. I am not good at growing large onions, so small to medium it is. And then we use chicken, or sometimes we will use venison backstrap, which is very much like filet mignon, and it makes fantastic chicken and steak hibachi. I cook it in the skillet. I add a little ginger, garlic powder, salt, and pepper. I saute the meat until it is cooked through, and then I stick it in the oven on the keep warm setting, just in case there are any pieces that are larger than the rest that still need to cook and get up to 165 before we eat. This chicken is so flavorful and tender. Hibachi night is one of my favorite summer dishes because it is simple, it's healthy, and you can do all sorts of sauces to really jazz it up and make it delicious. Now, I forgot to take a picture of our sauteed veggies, so here they are chopped. I make a hibachi sauce with melted butter, teriyaki sauce, soy sauce, a little sesame oil, garlic powder, and ginger. I am so sorry that I do not have a recipe to give you. If this is something you're interested in, let me know in the comments and I will tweak it just right so that I can actually write it down and add it in the description or do a different video where I show how I make all of these sauces. But this hibachi sauce is a pretty big game changer for hibachi night. It just really brings out the flavors that you get when you go to a Japanese steakhouse. Now, I typically pour half of this sauce into our rice and mix it really well. And I usually end up adding a little more soy sauce as well. But this takes the white rice up to a hibachi level and it's delicious. I don't need to add any other salt or pepper or any other seasonings. It's great just like this. And then I will pour the rest of the sauce over the chicken and veggies. Just a little bit. I kind of split whatever's left over the chicken and the veggies, and it just kind of adds some extra flavor to whatever sauces the kids end up choosing. This was the finished product. I poured a little bit of yum yum sauce over mine. I can share that recipe as well in another video. Thanks for watching.